So thank you all for joining us today. We're gonna welcome Commissioner Brendan Johnson, who's gonna do the welcome opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Carly. And thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate seeing all of you here and for being on board as we talk about transit planning in our communities in Oakland County. I'm Brendan Johnson. I'm the commissioner representing Auburn Hills and Rochester Hills, and I am also just incredibly honored to serve as the chair of the Oakland County Transit Committee. So I get to talk about all the fun things that all of you are doing and all the things that our residents want. You all know public transit isn't just a product that we build and deliver, although it very much is those things, but it's a promise that we make to our residents and to each other. And keeping that promise starts in rooms like these. Starts with listening to each other, sharing ideas with one another, and learning how to map the future of the public and physical infrastructure in Oakland County. And I just want to thank all of you for the work that you have been doing over the last 2 years. Now that we've got our new millage, and I've been incredibly proud to play any role that I am in watching this, and I'm excited about the future of it too. So I want to thank Eli. I thank our friends and partners with putting this together, and I'm excited to see what the conversations flow out of today. So I'll pass it back to you, Carly. But thank you all.
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Carly Mitchell. I am a project manager with HNTB. We are the consultant supporting Oakland County on the community transit plan. Today, we're going to start off with welcome and introductions. I'm joined today also by Eli Cooper, Adam Barnum, and Brad Strader, who are on the team, and we'll have a chance to introduce themselves as we go along. We'll be talking about the public and stakeholder engagement, what we've heard so far, and then presenting the draft service model packages, talking about next steps, and then opening it up if there's any questions and feedback. So before we begin, let's cover a few quick housekeeping items to ensure that everyone has a smooth experience. So live captions are available. To enable captions, look for an icon at the bottom of the Zoom window in the control panel. Just click it and you'll see options to turn captions on. We'll have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of our presentation where we can address any questions. You're able to put questions directly into the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature if you'd prefer to speak. If you're calling in, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Both options are available at the bottom of your screen. To minimize any background noise, everyone's been muted upon entry. If you have any question during the Q&A, we will help you unmute. So for closed caption translation, first locate the show captions button at the bottom of your screen. Once captions are enabled, you can toggle on the translation feature, click my caption language, and a menu will appear with available languages. Simply choose the language you prefer for your closed captions. The webinar is being recorded and it will be posted along with the slides on the Oakland Transit Community Transit Plan webpage a few days after the meeting. If you have any comments but do not want to share them live, you can call and leave a voicemail at the number on the screen, 248-975-9876, or send an email to oaklandcountytransit@oakgov.com. So next we're going to get into the community transit plan itself. So what does Oakland Transit do? Oakland Transit sets transit service goals and standards. They foster collaboration and coordination between transit service providers, and they collect, allocate, and distribute Oakland County public transportation millage funding. So right now, and we're in the midst of the Oakland County Community Transit Plan. This plan seeks to create a guide to improve transit services in Northern and Western Oakland County, develop goals for transit services, and identify realistic strategies to achieve these goals over the next decade. Based on existing conditions, state of the practice, and public and stakeholder engagement, the Oakland County Community Transit Plan will guide future growth and improvements to community transit services and help expand access to mobility. The plan area includes areas currently served by the North Oakland Transportation Authority, that's NOTA, People's Express, which is PEX, OPC Social and Activity Center, OPC, and then Western Oakland Transportation Authority, which is WOTA, WOTA. SMART also operates in Oakland County, and we've been collaborating with them as well to inform the plan. So this is our project timeline. We concluded phase 1 of the engagement in January and had a set of public meetings back in November. We're currently nearing the end of phase 2, which is the service model options. And then next up, we'll be conducting the implementation strategies, which will conclude this fall when we wrap up the plan. So our service goals. We started with a set of goals. These were based on input from transit agencies, transit riders, responses to our surveys, and the federal requirements for transit fundings. That input led to 8 goals, which were used to develop and evaluate service model packages that we will present in a bit. So those goals were to create reliable, safe, and affordable transit, improve quality of life and remove barriers, increase accessibility to transit, create a high quality rider experience, increase public understanding of transit, allocate funding responsibly and transparently, have open communication, and support the region's sustainability goals. So as I mentioned, we are nearing the end of phase 2. In phase 1 of the public engagement, we had a survey that received over 900 responses, held 2 public meetings, 2 steering committee meetings, 6 focus groups, and 5 pop-up events. In phase 2, we are similarly conducting a survey, nearing 400 responses. We're having our public meetings today, and we've also held focus groups and a steering committee meeting. What we've heard so far is that people are seeking better coordination between providers to facilitate smooth travel across service areas. We've heard that there is a need for better communication regarding available transit services and rider education, improved and consistent training for bus drivers to facilitate access for riders, improvements and consideration of fixed route connections, addressing accessibility issues such as inadequate bus stop infrastructure, seeking more transparency in service planning and the millage allocation, a desire for a more seamless transit system. People are looking potentially to expand services so that all people can have access across the county. And then also, as part of that seamless experience, allowing real-time scheduling and allowing users to make payments online. That's a summary of our engagement. All of that has led us to this point where we've been developing our service models. And to cover that, I'm going to pass it along to Adam Barnum, the service model lead.
Great. Thank you, Carly. So I'm going to cover a little bit here in terms of some of what Carly was mentioning, but in terms of the type of packages and different service options and policies and kind of our overall approach in terms of where we potentially are headed with some of our draft recommendations, and we want feedback from you all on. So if we're looking at this, there's different options that we've been exploring and different policies related to that. So what types of services are offered, as well as who's eligible to take these services, how that's all going to be kind of coordinated and discussed amongst the different groups and agencies. We've been thinking through all of those components. When we look at how this might actually be implemented, we're looking at a phased approach. So this will happen gradually. We're looking at, over the next couple of years, maybe exploring things like some pilot projects and establishing, different types of services that might be beneficial to communities, and then really trying to align more on those policies and different types of technology that's out there to be more efficient, to be more useful for the greater public. Then as we kind of explore more in a mid-long term, so several years down the road and kind of into, even a 5 to 10 year kind of increment in the future, we're looking at how we can really expand upon some of those things we develop in the short term, looking at, additional facilities and looking at different types of service and maybe expanding those types of things for you. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail here on the following slides. So to go in a little bit more detail about the different types of services that potentially could be offered, we want to spend a little bit of time just explaining some of those concepts so everyone can be more familiar with them. The first is what we call fixed route transit. So fixed route is very similar to just any type of typical bus route. We'll stop at usually designated stops along, a given roadway, and we'll have typically some type of signpost or some type of shelter that's you're able to actually see where that bus is going. We also are looking at express services, which would have very limited stops. Typically, can be used for commutes, can be used to serve certain major areas, commercial areas, or activity centers, some job centers as well. But would have limited stops and kind of get you more from point A to point B in a more quick manner. We also are looking at variations of that. So what we call a deviated fixed route is really something that is similar to that fixed route, but it is able to actually move off of a major roadway and make stops off of that. So this might get closer to your home, for example, or to your actual destination. Say you're trying to go to a medical facility or a shopping area that isn't quite on that route. You're able to have some flexibility and really kind of merge off of that roadway and get you a lot closer to where you're trying to go. So that's an option that we've been looking at that does provide that flexibility. We're also looking at a couple what we call zone-based services. So the first is our fixed zone demand response, really more of a fancy way of saying within a given area, you're able to travel to a lot of different locations. And as long as you're traveling within that boundary, you're really able to kind of just get picked up and dropped off in there within that area for a given fee. This is very similar to what Smart offers today for their Flex service. So similar to that, where you're able to actually move within a given zone. We're also looking at a similar method to that, but it's called distance-based demand response. And this has a lot to do with potentially being able to travel further, but you might have to pay a slightly higher fare or fee to go ahead and do that. So it's very similar to the concept I just mentioned, but as you travel further, let's say between a zone 1 to a zone 2, for example, that might cost you a certain amount. And then if you want to travel even further to that zone 3, like in this example, that might acquire an additional fee, but it does give you that flexibility of traveling much further than maybe you could within that other zone example I just mentioned. We also are going to be looking at paratransit services. This is going to be a baseline service that's offered for a lot of county residents, making sure that people that have mobility issues or of a certain income or age group really have that availability to make sure that trips can be made mainly for medical and shopping type purposes to make sure their needs are met. We are also looking at policies. And so to give you a really high level overview of this is it kind of can be boiled down to two main categories into rider eligibility and then scheduling and dispatch. So rider eligibility is really just looking at who can take the service. So and today sometimes there's a variation of that eligibility. So it might depend on where you live or what kind of provider that you're going to be working with. We're trying to help streamline that and make that more consistent so it can be open to the general public. It can be used for a lot of different people, not just a set criteria. So we're exploring options related to that. We're also looking at the scheduling and dispatch area where scheduling is really determining that frequency of service or really where the service is going to be at any given part of the day. So looking at how that can be flexible, how that can be modified in different variations of that. And on the dispatch side, this is more for when we talk about an agency perspective about you need to schedule a trip, you need to work on actually management of that as well. So if you're calling into somebody that you're talking to a dispatch center that will help you kind of book a trip, it also can be related to the internal measures where they're actually able to schedule service for people. They're able to track vehicles and modify things and help you make those trips more complete and move things around. So we're looking at a lot of different variations of that as well. So to look at how things are today, we'll spend just a second on here, but there's multiple organizations that have a couple different service policies. So we look at rider eligibility, and typically these are open to the general public, but there is some variation on that based on how old you are and who it can serve. So there are some variations on that we're looking to explore and streamline. Fares are generally fairly similar, but as we talk about different service types, sometimes that can change. If we're trying to travel much further, there might be different fare structures that we'll look at. to help improve service or make things more consistent and easier for everybody to understand as they use these services. When you call or as you book a trip, scheduling can vary based on where you live and the organizations that it uses. And so that is something, as you can see, is that there's some variation of that, along with hours of service about when service is actually offered. They're much closer and can be kind of consistent here today, but there is some variation. We're looking to, again, streamline those and make it much easier to understand in the future and trying to find ways that this can be more consistent. And then ultimately, when we talked about service types, we mentioned kind of some of the different examples, and we've been going through more of a scenario planning process where we're trying to see, what are the benefits and potentially cons of different variations of service and also different structures of different providers. And so this was more of a kind of a high level exercise that we're trying to understand, what would best be, what is the best option for Oakland County in the future? What are kind of the pros and cons? And so we've been looking at all these different pieces and weighing them and really trying to figure out if we are better off with one big organization, if we're better off with a couple different ones, how that is going to impact travel, how that might improve some people's trips, how that might be more efficient on the back end as well for organizations, and how that can lead to some improvements to service in the future. So we've been keeping an eye on all this and kind of using this and weighting against those project goals that Carly was mentioning to see what is going to be the best path forward in the future. And that has helped us kind of look into our next piece where we are taking those and really looking at the evaluation side. So I mentioned the service goals as we're kind of walking through the different options that are available, we are going back to these 8 service goals and seeing how, if we have multiple organizations or different types of services, how well do those meet the goals? How is that going to help us determine that best path forward? We're taking that and looking at those things, but also as related to this meeting and a lot of our other aspects of where we've been kind of out in the community, we're looking for a lot of engagement and feedback. So from this group, if there's anything that comes to mind that can help us kind of push us in one direction, we're looking for that feedback. What's going to be most supportive for you? If you haven't taken the survey, we're taking a lot of that content in mind as well and trying to help us craft, what is the best path forward here. And so all this is going to kind of boil together into where we're kind of headed with some of our initial kind of recommendations and ideas. And so we do think that this is a progression. As I mentioned, there's a potential phasing of anything that's going to change is going to happen over time. So currently we're looking at a lot of different organizations and kind of in the county that are providing a variety of different services and connecting with, these kind of general area like the smart area. But there can be some inefficiencies in today. We know that they have those varied kind of service hours, some eligibility. There's also a lot of different like separate scheduling and dispatch and facilities. So there can be some kind of growing pains as you're going through that and working on that. And so we're looking to kind of phase this slowly where we might be trying to find ways to, in the midterm, for example, improve some of those longer trips, trying to make sure that people can get to where they want to go, make things just more consistent, easier to understand, really start there and try to be more coordinated with how kind of service is provided and offered and really help, get you from point A to point B in the most efficient way that's going to best suit your needs moving forward. I think long term, we are looking to continue to improve upon this. So how do we make things really more seamless? How do we kind of unify, a variety of different technologies and things to, again, improve that rider perspective, how you can actually get to different places, how we can share facilities, be more optimized and efficient in terms of like how things are operated and maintained. This is our long-term goal of really bringing everybody together to try to make sure we can kind of meet the needs of the county moving forward. And with that, I'll hand it over to Eli.
Thank you, Adam, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Eli Cooper. I am Oakland County's transit manager, and I'd like to thank all of the participants for joining us or logging on to this recorded webinar, and to the project team, Carly, Adam, and others who have prepared this presentation. A lot of information is being presented, and I'm hoping that it's addressing the viewing audience's interest. Obviously, we will accept questions and answers both as part of the webinar and subsequent to that, I'll be covering that in a future slide. My role is to talk a little bit about the next steps, which is after completion of the public engagement part of this process, the county staff, project team, and our local operators will collaborate in drafting an implementation chapter. The implementation strategies or chapter will describe and define both short and long-term opportunities for the variety of elements that you see on the screen. We're looking at organization size, we're looking at staffing strategies, detailing what fleet composition is necessary, facilities to service those fleet, and technology. Clearly, Adam talked about different types of service designs, and the different type of services do require different technology. So through our implementation section, we'll look to bringing together what the recommended service design is with a strategy to acquire the right people, products, and technology in order to deliver the services that we're planning for. We are also considering the less tangible but critically important financial communications and marketing strategies as part of our implementation work. So all of that will be coming back out for the public consumption as we get into the fall. Although we are capturing your input as part of this webinar and or meeting, I'd like to invite anyone who's engaged either in the webinar or reviews this after the fact, that we do have a live survey link where we are accepting feedback and comment on both the presentation and on our transit services generally. We would request that you complete the survey, and as you do that, you will also have an opportunity to enroll in an ongoing panel that we are facilitating. In addition to completing it yourself, feel free to, as it says on the bottom of the slide, help publicize the survey, share it with your friends, family, and coworkers. Please check back from time to time on the either the county transit website, if that's where you're accessing this webinar, or through the QR codes, because we are updating our survey process every few months, and we have different questions. We'd love to continue to hear from you. At this point, I'd like to again thank you for joining us here this afternoon, and we'll begin to address any questions that have come in.